Thanks everyone for joining us for tonight's parent and student presentation, planning for life after high school. We have a lot of great information to share with you tonight. There's a couple of presenters. Maybe we'll just go ahead and introduce ourselves so you can see us right away. My name is Chrissy DeLong. I'm one of the counselors here at the high school. I'm going to talk for a little bit at the beginning, but then if you won't hear from me unless you're sticking around for the financial aid presentation at the end, which I really encourage everyone to hear. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining.
Hi, my name is Beth Gamoki, one of the school counselors here as well.
And I'm John Horman. I'm one of the school counselors here.
And I'm Bridget Hubbard. I'm the senior class advisor and the scholarship coordinator.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Tonight we have some different topics we're going to cover. First, we're going to have Ms. Hubbard talk to us about senior class information, lots of good stuff as far as like cap and gown and scholarships, and she'll be covering that Onalaska specific information. We will be talking about post-secondary options, so both the process for whether you're planning for college, work, or military, as well as the timeline of events that are going on. And we'll share with you a senior year timeline that we'll also make available afterwards that has a lot of the important dates on it. We will have a little bit of a question and answer after the first part of the presentation where you can ask us questions up to that point about all of the post-secondary information, scholarships, and then we'll take a short break so that then we can start the financial aid presentation around 7:15. And there will be a question and answer at the end of that one as well for financial aid specific information or if anything else pops up. So before we get going, just want to get an idea of the type of crowd that we have with us tonight. We usually have you all raise your hands when we're in the PAC, so we're just going to do this remotely. And so our question today is just what option best describes your experience with senior year planning? And if you can just go ahead and click on one of those to let us know whether this is your first senior, you're new here, you've done this before, but maybe it's been a little while, things have changed over the past couple of years. Or maybe you've done this recently, but you're here for the updates or to have your senior student right alongside you to hear all this information. For them, it's the first time. So go ahead and take a moment. All right. So it looks like for the majority, we've got a little over 70% they're new here, first seniors. And then we've done it before, but it's been a little while. And then thank you to our returning families who are here for updates. We do have some updates for you. So thank you so much. All right, so Ms. Hubbard is going to talk about senior class information.
All right, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I just have a few short things to share with you as we get started. Most of you will see me more of second semester or hear from me via email and those kinds of things. So I did want to just touch base with you on a few things. On Thursday of this week, you will and your student will both be receiving a Bright Arrow message from our office, and that information will actually go over the ordering link for our cap and gown. At Onalaska High School, every student is required to have a purple cap, gown, and tassel. And that's all they are required to have. When you get onto the Jostens website, you will find hundreds of other options. What I did and I will share it with you on this link, I will also provide a short video on the specific package that's required. The cap, gown, and tassel is $29.99. And you can just go ahead and place that order online. If online ordering is not something that's available to you, there are a small amount of forms that are available in the high school office. And all you need to do is give a call to the office and either Mrs. Dirks or Mrs. Turner will make sure that you get an order form that you could mail a check to Jostens. In order to avoid any late fees, all of the orders need to be placed no later than November 1st. Jostens is a third-party vendor, so they want us to have group orders. So again, if we could do that sooner rather than later, that would be really helpful for all of us. The $29.99, it does include everything that they will need. They'll add tax onto that, but they will deliver that in late winter, early spring, right to the high school. And then the students will pick up their items, their packages with the Jostens representative. I can answer some questions about caps and gowns, but I couldn't answer a question specifically about if your payment had gone through. That would be a question that you would need to ask specifically to Jostens. And I can provide that information via an email if you need to communicate that with me as well. Also, if you have a cap and gown that's been used in Onalaska over the past 10 years, that's totally acceptable provided that it fits your graduate. Totally acceptable to use that again. They would just need to get their class of 2021 tassel, and that can be ordered right on that website as well. So they're more than welcome to reuse that. The dye lots are the same for about 10 years. So if it's something longer ago than that, it might not work as well. Also, maybe you need a little bit different size. Start communicating, that with friends and stuff, and maybe we can pass some of these around too. That's one of the reasons that we, are all wearing that same color. So again, please, if you have any questions about that, don't ever hesitate to email me. You will hear from me again, and I'll send out some reminders again to make sure that you get those orders placed. The second items that I wanted to share with you deal with the scholarships. There is a handout that's linked on the slide that I have here, just scholarship, just facts, just little things. There's really 4 types of scholarships that students can get for any type of post-secondary, whether it is a 2-year, 4-year institution, it doesn't matter. There are certainly scholarships available for everyone. Our local scholarships, we have a very generous community, and we have a scholarship package that students apply using one application, and they are then considered for somewhere between 70 and 80 scholarships each year. That will be released to students in January. We'll have a meeting of some sort at that time, and that'll be announced as we know what that meeting can look like. And that application will be due at the end of February. But again, that's only one way that students should be looking for assistance in terms of the scholarship area. Please make certain that you communicate with the post-secondary institution that students are interested in attending. Many of them, most of them have foundations, and their foundations have very nice endowments that they're able to share with students. Everyone applies for those just a little bit differently. So again, make sure that you communicate with them. On the Student Services website, they will also be posting on their scholarship database different more regional or statewide scholarships, and those scholarships are added on a regular basis. I always suggest to families that right now it's pretty quiet. There's not a lot out there right now, but as it gets closer to October and November, I would just schedule on Sunday evening, on Wednesday evening, whenever it is. It doesn't matter when it is. I'm just going to check that database and make sure that, if something's been added, to see if we would be eligible to apply to that. Lastly, also on that website, Student Services has shared some reputable sites for national scholarships. And I would take advantage of this information. FastWeb is an example that they provide a reputable and safe place for students to see what's available in and around the world. One thing that I will warn you of is there are some not reputable sites that you should be you should steer clear of. Anytime it would ask for a student ID number that it's not at the university or institution that they are planning to attend, I would never enter that. A social security number, a credit card number, anytime you would have to pay in order to be considered for a scholarship, that should be a red flag. That should be something that you should stay away from. So again, those are just a few little things that I had to share with you. And over the course of the year, as we get closer to graduation and applying for scholarships, you'll hear from me just a little bit more. But I will remind you about the caps and gowns. And again, look for that email from the office. Again, it'll be a bright arrow email. It'll have the Jostens link along with a short video on where you can find the package that you need. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hubbard, for presenting tonight. We're very fortunate to have you sharing your expertise and your experience. That FAQ link that Mrs. Hubbard referenced is also going to be available to everyone viewing the presentation, and even those who are not. We'll have this PowerPoint on our website a little bit later after we're done presenting tonight, so that link will be there for sure. So getting started with thinking about the rest, or the rest of this first half of the presentation, we want students to be thinking not just about, okay, well, I'm going to go to college, so what do I need to do in order to get into college? But we want students to really be thinking big picture about what kinds of things do I see myself doing in the future down the road. We don't expect our seniors to have their life all planned out. Granted, a year from today, they're going to be actively involved in whatever's next in their future. But we should, at this point, as a senior, have kind of narrowed down more or less the kinds of work or the types of things that I might want to do in my future. And so as I narrow that down, I can start to think, what are my options for after high school that would be a good way for me to move forward towards that option? And so, of course, there are many things that a person could do right after high school. I could go right to work after high school. We do have several students who choose that option, and maybe later on down the road, they go on for more education. More often than not, students, after working for a while, they do. Also, under that realm of work, we do have an option, and more of our students really should take advantage of this option of an apprenticeship. So I might be interested in working in a trade, something where I'm working with my hands and building and fixing things. I can have an apprenticeship where I can find an employer that's out in the community who will hire me on. They'll pay me to work at an entry level in a work field. And also, if I'm hired on as an apprentice, they will pay for me to attend usually a technical college to take some courses in that field. So maybe I'm interested in becoming an electrician or a plumber, very high paid fields. These employers will pay me for the work that I'm doing for them and also pay for some college classes. So consider an apprenticeship if I'm thinking about especially more kind of trade related fields. I could be interested in joining the military, and we're going to mention a little bit more about the military down the road. That might be a great way to have a career. I have a brother who retired in his early 50s. That's a pretty sweet deal, where I might decide to make an entire career out of the military, or I might decide I'm going to serve in the military for 2 or 3 or 4 years and earn some benefits for college for that. Also, if I'm interested in the military and interested in heading on to more education after high school, the ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps program, is a great way to have your college paid for and have experience in the military. Once I graduate from a 4-year college and I'm part of an ROTC program, I do commit to serving some time in the military, but I start off as an officer, being paid better. And so that is an option as well. If I'm interested, if I've been thinking about ROTC, that is something that I should really start working on that right now. A lot of times even late in the junior year is about the time when we would start that, but it's not too late to start exploring an ROTC option if I'm interested in that. And then also many students will look to going on to higher education. So I'm either going to work, I'm going to join the military, or I'm going to go on for more higher education. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about what is it that I need to do to get into a 4-year college, but again, thinking of what it is that I'm interested in for a career for myself down the road. Don't rule out some of these other options for higher education as well. Many of our students will go to a 2-year technical college to be trained specifically in a certain kind of job. And it's not just the trades or hands-on fields. There are a lot of very high-paying, very, very high-tech kinds of careers, or even more so interactive, personal types of careers. I like working with people, for example, that I can do with a technical college degree. It can be a very efficient way to get out into the workforce very quickly and be paid very well. I might be looking at going to a 4-year college, but as an intermediate step, I might look at a freshman, sophomore college, a junior college, a community college. They're called a lot of different things, but a community college is a way for me to take four-year college courses and pay essentially a technical college price for those courses. So I might look at a two-year campus, like a Richland Center has, in a sense, a satellite of the UW Platteville campus, or in Rochester, there's a community college. You might be saying, well, can I do that at the technical college as well? I can do that. I can go to the technical college and transfer my credits to a university also. Just keep in mind that a technical college has their hands in a lot of different things that can be trained for a specific career, or take some classes and transfer them to the university. A community college, they only exist for that purpose of transferring students to a four-year college. And it is important to be very cautious with choosing courses that we know are going to transfer to the university and be useful for moving me forward and actually earning a degree from that four-year college. A lot of times a four-year college might accept credits from a technical college or a two-year college, but it might not be the kinds of credits that you actually need to graduate with my degree in psychology, for example. So those are a few options there. I can look, of course, at four-year colleges, which we will talk at great length more about. And then also, if I'm really very knowledgeable about a specific career that I would really like to work in, I really want to be an auto mechanic, I really want to work as a chef, there might be trade schools that are specifically designed to only train me for that specific kind of career. If I'm not 100% sure about that, going through a two-year technical or a four-year college that I can easily switch my degrees or the types of career programs that I'm in might be a better option for you. So keeping in mind, I have a lot of different options there for myself. It's always good to do. So starting off, if I'm looking at those first two options, I'm interested in going to work or I'm interested in joining the military. Just a few things that we want to point out to the students that are considering that option. If I'd like to go to work, definitely preparing a resume and a cover letter, very helpful. We have a practical everyday English class, which is really great to help you prepare for that. Also, and this is really for anyone, think about my preparation for an interview. So if I'm going to be interviewing for a job, that can be kind of a nerve-wracking sort of thing to do. The more we practice that, the more comfortable we are with that, the more natural we can be with that. We as your school counselors are willing to do practice interviews with students. Maybe you as parents are willing to do that as well. So actually spending time doing that before you sit down for an interview can help make that whole interview process much more natural. We also talked with seniors last week on Thursday or Friday about considering their professional image. So a few things to consider with that. If I'm applying for a job, somebody might look me up and see, do I have a Twitter? Do I have an Instagram? Do I have a Facebook page? And what can I see when I just scroll through what's available on that? So thinking to myself as an 18-year-old, if whatever it is that I have on my Instagram or whatever social media account that's available for anyone in the public to view, if I feel like that might make grandma or grandpa blush, maybe that's something that I might take off, or I might adjust a little bit, or maybe I might have my account only available for my friends who I admit in to be able to view. So now is a good time to kind of think about that and see what we have posted in our past or even in our present right now. Also with our professional image, think about what our student's email address is. And so students would want to provide a personal email address for work or military or the colleges that they're going to be working with. They may have created that email address for themselves when they were in 6th or 7th grade. Obviously, as an 17, 18-year-old, they're in a different place maturity-wise than they were when they were in 6th or 7th grade. So whatever that email address was, it might have been cute at the time, but maybe is not necessarily the most adult-sounding thing right now. So it may not be a bad time to create a new email address that is a little more adult-like. And then really important if I'm looking to get into the work world to be networking. So you as parents are great resources because you know people that are out in the community through your professional and personal life that might be a good networking source for your student to start communicating with, especially if they have if they work in a field that might be similar to the kinds of fields that they might enjoy working in. Next, if I'm looking at that second option of going to the military, the wonderful thing about that is that we have great recruiters in the community, and they will walk students through step by step everything that they need to do. If I am looking at joining the military, just keep in mind one of the things that we would definitely need to take care of is having an ASVAB test, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. Yes, if I graduate from high school, that's one of the major criteria for being eligible for the military, but they also do have career cutoffs based on this ASVAB test. So depending on how well I do on that ASVAB test, that will determine what type of career and just general admission into different branches of the military. So we were planning on offering the ASVAB test in the spring, but then COVID got in the way of that. So we are offering essentially a makeup date for the ASVAB test on October 27th. But the nice thing about the ASVAB is that at any point you can just contact the recruiter and they can proctor that exam to you as well. One last thing about these two options, if I'm going to join the workforce or enter the military, keep in mind that this last year of high school, the senior year, is even more important for you as students entering the workforce, entering the military, because in a sense, it's really potentially your last chance at continuing to develop those strong academic skills that you need, reading and writing and math skills that your employers or people in the military are really going to expect you to have. So definitely your senior year is an important year for you to continue to develop all of those academic skills as well. So it's not like it's not as important for you.
All right, so I am going to start talking about the college section. So the third choice that's available to students, and this can include all the different types of colleges that John talked about just a few minutes ago on a previous slide. And so we want you to take notice on the first of this slide, the key up at the top, where the A would represent all different types of schools. The 4, we're talking about those 4-year colleges and universities, and the asterisks can completely vary by school, and I'll walk you through that. This section is a lot more slides than the military and work section, and we don't want people to believe that it's because it's more important. It's just a lot more involved to get to where you want to be for college. So we don't feel like that's necessarily the best fit for everybody, but there's just a lot more information to share with students that are going to college. So on this slide, what you can see is there's 3 main things that all schools have to process a student's application. So you have to apply, you have to pay a fee, and you need to send grades. So we'll start with the first one in applying online. Certainly online is the preferred method all the time, and especially right now, it's even more preferred. It's quicker and easier for your student likely, and also for the college, because all the information goes directly into their computer system when it's submitted. So that's really a helpful piece, and like I said, typically a lot easier anyhow. Applying early is very important, and this is for any of the types of schools. Sometimes there's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding that, oh, I can just apply anytime to the technical schools. We really do want all students that are looking at colleges of any kind to apply early. At the technical school, sure, you could apply at the end of your senior year and still get into the technical school, but you have to get into the program itself within the technical school, and those a lot of times can fill up. And so we do want students to be applying right away. Right now, we met with your students, your seniors last week on Thursday and Friday. We polled them to see where they were at, and the majority of them were in the right place. They're thinking about it, but maybe they haven't quite started yet. And so hopefully this is that nudge that they need to get going on it right now. And we are telling students that we really have a goal for them to get their applications in by Thanksgiving. That is really the time when you're not going to procrastinate your way onto a wait list for most schools. Now, there may be some schools that are more competitive, for example, that have some earlier deadlines for you or for your student to get in. Sometimes you see November 1 for some earlier decisions and whatnot. So definitely you want to be checking your schools for that. But Thanksgiving would be the latest for sure. Mr. Horman talked about professional image already. That completely follows in line here for students applying to colleges as well. Check that email address and social media. We have heard of college reps checking that out as well. And then in terms of finding the application, this is going to vary by school a little bit, but there are some school systems that share applications. So the Common Application, for example, I'll even back up. The University of Wisconsin system has one application process for all of their different UW schools, whereas the Common Application isn't necessarily one system, it's multiple different schools. It kind of tends to be the bigger, more competitive, and then sometimes the smaller, more private schools is sort of what you see, but we're starting to see a few more UWs in there too. So again, having your student look and see, what are the schools on my list? Are they all under the Common Application? Amazing. That's one big, but one application I can fill out for all of my schools at once. Am I doing all Minnesota State colleges? Great. One system, and I can apply to that app and select my different schools and save myself some time. So that's definitely something to check right from the get-go. The second piece of this is the fee. The schools are for the most part still having a fee. UW has gone down except for Madison. Some private schools, you can see them waiving at different times. You know, they might have a private school week for their state where they waive fees or whatnot. So, but online is preferred with that as well, as opposed to trying to mail a check and having them sort all of that out. And as with any of the fees throughout the students' years with assessments and things like this, if it's an issue to pay for it, please contact the student's counselor. We don't want that to be a barrier. It's sort of like we can provide financial aid for this part, and then there's FAFSA for some of the other stuff later. So please make sure the students or you contact us for that. And then the last piece that is required by schools is the student's high school grades or their transcript of some sort. Most traditionally, schools will ask for an actual transcript. This can look different ways. If you look in the sub-bullet point, we have a new Google form that we're starting to use, again, because of what's happening right now, but we're finding we really like it, on the high school website that we'll show you in just a few minutes, where students can request their transcript be sent. We're not charging a fee right now, and so students can request that way. The other way that sometimes happens depends on the college and the college application, but sometimes they can just request it electronically by providing the school counselor's email. The Common Application is this way. The student would enter in our email address, and then we get a notification in email, and we fill out the school form, we upload a transcript, and it's pretty slick and done. There's another one called Send EDU that's very common that way as well. So again, it does vary by school, but all schools want the transcript in some way. So we can show you the transcript form right now. We did show the students, but want to be able to show you that as well. So this is actually the senior students' Google Classroom. And we're gonna show you that in some more detail in a little bit, but we've got everything really nice and organized for them. So under the first topic there of student services information, we have the transcript request form. So when the student goes to that, they're gonna fill in some basic information at the top. Again, we are waiving the fee right now, even though it says there's a $1 fee. So this is name, first and last name, grad year, some basic stuff at the beginning. And on page 2 is the really important question. So we know that a lot of things changed last spring. And so colleges understand that too. And they know that classes were wacky, transcripts are a little bit wacky. You know, the testing that we're going to talk about, it was all kind of wacky, right? So we know that they are expecting to see pass-fail grades a lot of times, or for us, it was the pass no credit grades on transcripts a lot of times. But we also offered the students the opportunity to be able to show their letter grades. So this would be a great conversation to have with your student. If the student earned mainly A's and B's last year, spring semester, we would still recommend that they send their transcript with the letter grades. It will not hurt by any means to send the pass-fail, but if the student had some really good grades, it can definitely enhance their application and show the college reps like, wow, even though things were wacky, the student worked hard and powered through and were able to get some really good grades. So we do have that question here. Do you want the pass-fail option of your transcript, or do you want the letter grade option sent? Okay. And so at this point, it's just what is the reason I've applied to the school? And this question, where should it be sent, is the next one. We don't necessarily need the full address. They don't necessarily have to look it up, but we do at least need the name of the college and the city and state. For example, there's multiple Luther colleges. So are we talking about Luther and Decorah, for example? So that's what we need on there. And then once that's submitted, Melissa DeBoer will take care of getting those out to the colleges. So it's a pretty quick and easy way and really accessible for the students to be able to do that. And like I said, the other way would be to provide the counselor's email address right in the application. There is another fun, we'll say, thing that colleges have been doing recently, and that is called self-reporting grades. We told the kids, go ahead and roll your eyeballs, because we do too. Some applications require students to basically enter in their transcript, class by class and grade by grade, for whatever reason. They will still have to send an actual transcript, an official transcript at a later date, but they do ask students, and it's required on some applications. So we walked the students through this, just something for you all to be aware of as well. We did send all the seniors a copy of their transcript at the beginning of the year, knowing that some anyways, of them would have to be doing this. Sorry, I forgot that little piece. Mrs. DeLong there just circled the grading scale. That is one thing that has tripped up students in the past. I think some of the different options are 4.0 and some different things in there. We do want to use the A to F grading scale at the top. That's how we do our grading scale, not our GPA scale. So that will allow the students to enter their semester grades down below as A through F, and then the semester credits from there.
All right, thanks, Mrs. Kamoki. So the next steps that we would have in the college application process, it all depends. You'll notice these all have little asterisks next to them, so it depends on the circumstances. So the next thing that I would need to send off to a college are my test scores, and that's a maybe. And usually there is not a maybe with that, you just have to. But again, because of COVID-19, most colleges have gone to what we call test optional. They understand that students may have had a chance to get one ACT or SAT in, or maybe none at all, depending. And so they recognize that it might have been very difficult to have taken the ACT once or twice or maybe 3 times in order to get the score that a student may have really wanted. And so a lot of colleges are saying, if you do not send an ACT score at all, we're not going to hold that against you. Also, if you sent your ACT score, because a lot of students just sent their scores automatically to a couple of colleges, that also is not going to be held against them, especially if the score isn't quite exactly what the college would typically look for. Again, because they recognize that it might have been very difficult to get several scores, or to get the ACT score that a student really wanted to because of the limitations. So because of that, You may want to go ahead and just double check with your colleges to see if they are indeed test optional. Again, most are going to be. And if they are requiring an ACT or an SAT, that you would go ahead and send that to them officially. Most colleges are going to say at some point along the way, if we are requiring an ACT or an SAT, that we do need that to be sent officially from the testing organization. So not something that we would be able to just make a photocopy of and send to them or a scan to them, but they would need it officially from the testing company. Also, if you are applying to a school that is test optional, more than likely you will be, think to yourself, what is it that is required, or what is it that is preferred? What does the average admitted student look like with an ACT profile? And also, what does the average admitted student look like as far as the kinds of grade point averaging class rank that they typically like to see? And if you see that your ACT score is really solidly in the average range of what that college usually expects or likes to see, or even a little above what they usually expect to see or what they like to see, go ahead and send that score. Just because the school is test optional doesn't mean that you can't send your score to them and that they won't consider it if you decide to share that with them. So go ahead and send that score to them if you are happy with how you did on your ACT. Also, if I'm thinking of a technical college, specifically Western Technical College, which a lot of our students will go to, you may hear or see some things in your Star Conference folder about an AccuPlacer test. That is also an option for being placed into programs at the technical college. The AccuPlacer test is currently on a hiatus at the technical college just because it's difficult for them to get students in to safely test on their campus. So right now, just so you're aware, the technical college as well is test optional, or they are waiving the need to have a test score, and they'll look at things like your transcript or past records. Again, you could send an ACT score for that you had taken in the spring, or kind of the middle of the winter. Really is when we took that ACT. If you're meeting that requirement of a 17 to get into a program or a 19 to get into a college, four-year college transfer program at the technical college, they'll use that to help make a determination as well. So if you met that cutoff, a 17 to get into a career program, a 19 to get into the take four-year college classes and transfer them, go ahead and send that to the technical college and they'll be able to use that. The next thing that is an option, or that some four-year colleges, specifically four-year colleges, are going to ask you to do is to write an essay. And so if we look at the next screen, we're going to see an example of what a college essay might look like. So this is pulled right off the University of Wisconsin website. Most four-year colleges in the University of Wisconsin system are going to ask a question that's like this. They tend to be relatively broad questions that they're asking you. And so something to the effect of, tell us something about yourself, academically or personally, and what you've learned from it, for example. The main thing that you want to be thinking about as you write your essay, as you draft an essay, is one, this is an essay. So just as if an English teacher were to give me an assignment to write an essay, I'm going to write this essay in a way that would make my English teacher proud. I'm going to have an introduction, a body, a conclusion. I'm going to use good grammar. I'm going to have people proofread it for me. Also, when I think about my content, I'm going to think to myself, what is something that I have not already said? If it's something that you have listed in your application already, I'm in the Onalaska Business Club and I was the president. You've already maybe said that, so you don't need to necessarily rehash that unless there's something more that you can add that kind of adds some value to that information. So maybe as the president of the Onalaska Business Club, I organized a fundraiser, or I organized an activity, or did some specific leadership activities to help the advisor out. If you can write that out so that the admissions people can see what exactly did you do to help you with this process, or to help that organization be successful, that is really useful information that they like to see. Also, colleges really like to see that you have persevered through adversity. Maybe not everybody has a story to tell with that, but if you do have a story to tell with that, I have a disability and I persevered through that. I broke my leg when I was a sophomore, and I persevered through that. Or I've had my own mental health struggles and I persevered through that. And this is what that looks like today, and how I function at my highest level today through my own perseverance. And so that's something that is going to be really, really useful as well to share in my essays. A few other things as we flip to the next slide to kind of think about with essays is I might find that I can use my essay for more than one school. Maybe I'm applying to UW Green Bay and UW Parkside. And so I might decide, well, they seem to be asking the same question. I'm going to go ahead and just use that same essay. That's fine, but you do want to be careful if, for example, in your essay you talk about why you love UW Green Bay and how you have always wanted to go to UW Green Bay, and because you're going to be close to the Packers and you love the idea of going to college in the middle of a forest, and then you send that to UW Parkside as well, and the people at UW Parkside and their admissions office are going to be very offended because you're, of course, talking about a college that's not them in your essay. So you do want to be careful of cutting and pasting when it comes to that piece. And a few other things just about your essay. Some students will sometimes say, you know what, I know that I am in really good condition for being admitted to this college. I really don't have time to write a great essay. I'm just going to write a couple of sentences, or maybe even be a little bit of a smart aleck with what I say in my essay. Keep in mind that sometimes four-year colleges will use your admissions essay to consider you for scholarships as well. So be thinking of that as you write out your essays to make sure that you write a really solid essay. So I've got my test scores that I might need to send. I have my essay that I might need to do. And then the last thing is I might need to send a letter of recommendation. Again, it depends on the school. Pretty much only a four-year college is going to like or need to see a letter of recommendation. Some four-year colleges will say, I want you to send a letter of recommendation. I don't care if you have a perfect ACT and a perfect GPA. I still want to see at least one letter of recommendation. If that's what they're requiring, then we're going to jump through that hoop and we're going to make them happy by sending that one letter of recommendation. UW-Madison is an example of a school that we work with frequently that requires that no matter what. Most schools, however, are going to say it's totally optional for you to send a letter of recommendation or not. And so some things to think about with that letter of recommendation piece. How do I know whether or not I need that letter of recommendation? If you go back up to our conversation that we had about your test score, should I or should I not send my test score? If I know what the average admitted student looks like for this college, and I know I'm solidly within the average range or above average, I probably do not need a letter of recommendation if they're not specifically saying send one. But if I'm kind of towards the bottom of that range of what they would usually admit, the profile they would usually admit, or maybe a little lower than their average admitted profile for a student, then it would be a good idea to send 1, 2, no more than 3 letters of recommendation. Some schools will say we'll only look at 2 letters of recommendation no matter how many you send. So you want to look at that as well. But again, no more than 3 if they don't set a limit. And you'd want to be looking at people that know you in an academic setting. So your counselor, teachers from high school. If you want to send 3 letters, maybe to have the 3rd letter be a coach or an employer, that's an okay thing to do as well. We do have a tool for you in your Google Classroom, and it is on our website as well. Anybody from the high school that you're asking to write a letter of recommendation for you, we're pretty much all going to ask you to fill out this form, a letter of recommendation request form. Basically, it's a place where you're going to give us a lot of information about yourself that's very useful for us to have. That way we can use that as a tool to write a solid letter of recommendation for you. And so when you pull up this form in the Google Classroom, you want to make sure that you thoroughly fill it out. Instead of in the academic awards and honors, I actually had a student once write the word stuff, S-T-U-F-F. That's all they said under that piece. And I know that they had a lot of academic awards and honors that they had received. So the more you can tell me, the more I'm going to be able to come up with a theme for that good solid letter of recommendation and write you a really good letter of recommendation. So be sure to use that tool to help request a letter of recommendation from your teachers or staff member. Mrs. Gamoki.
All right. So some different resources that are available. We've mentioned a couple different times about this Google Classroom, and you got to see a sneak peek at it, but we want to show you a little bit more of the Google Classroom. After we met with the seniors last week, Friday, we sent them out the code for it. So they all have access to it now. And we would invite you to remind your student to invite you as well. That way you could have access to this and see this information along with them. So we have it organized in a pretty nice way. I don't know how much you guys have looked at your students' Google Classrooms. So one thing that's really important when you first open the Google Classroom, it'll always open to this stream view, which we have shut off because it just is this humongous long list in no particular order, which we don't find very helpful. So up here where this mouse is, where it says classwork, is really where you want to click. And then we've got it kind of broken down into the different bits of information. So some different things that we want to show you in here. Under the, first of all, I guess we have it broken down into the different, domains that we work in. We've got the academic, career, and the social emotional. So one thing in the career that I want to point out, something that we would recommend for our students is, gosh, let's start getting out into the world. You say you want to be an accountant. Let's have you hang with an accountant for a little while and do a job shadow or something like that. Obviously, right now, that's really difficult. But there are some things that we can do virtually and offer to the students virtually, where at least they can get a touch at that. So in this ACP for seniors, or academic and career planning for seniors section, we've got some different bits of information. Certainly Zello offers that, and we continue to remind the students and parents about that. Underneath each career area, there's 2 different interviews with a professional. The student can also post their own questions to a local professional. John Chrissy and I, for example, are career coaches under the school counselors. So it is real live local people answering the questions, which is pretty cool. This student career info one is a newer one that we've been sharing with the students last year and this year since we've been virtual. In there, the students can choose different career clusters, which they're very familiar with. And from there, they can see different half-hour long sessions. If they tune in live, there's an interactive exchange. They can always see recorded past presentations. And so it's as close as we can get to a virtual job shadow. So that's a really interesting thing for students to be diving into. Maybe they don't have, a whole lot of homework yet too soon in the school year. This would be something, really great for them to dive into and check into a little bit more. So back in our Google Classroom, scrolling down, you can see the social emotional is in there. Here's the college application and prep materials section. Something else that typically happens at the beginning of the school year is we would have college and military representatives come to the high school to be able to meet with students one-on-one. Clearly, we can't do that. So this is something that we've been working on and trying to get in touch with different reps and have them get in touch with us and get them on here as well. So for example, our career coach from Western, Mac, she's got her appointment schedule in there, the Zoom link. So once the student has made the appointment, they know how they can get in touch with Mac. So that's just one example of some different things that we have going on. We've got UW-Madison, we've got Kayla able to meet with students. So we have military recruiters that will get on here. We've got the West Point guy right now. So definitely another thing for the students to continue checking for. On that line, maybe you have not been able to do campus visits because of quarantine and now things continuing this semester. Certainly you can go on colleges' websites and see virtual tours and different things. Something else in here that you can check out are the virtual college fairs. So within here, right now, there's 2 different ones in there. There's a Wisconsin Education Fair and one through the NACAC that's got some schools from all over the country as well. So when you get in there, there's multiple different schools that you can hook up with live at certain times, or you can kind of browse on your own, like a fair would be, sort of walking up and down the aisles on your own time. So there's some different options in there to be able to check out some different schools. So another really great option. Another section we have in the Google Classroom is the financial aid and scholarships. That scholarship FAQ that Bridget talked about earlier is in here, along with different FAFSA information. Chrissy's going to be talking about that in a little bit. The scholarship database is linked right here. So a lot of different information. We've really tried to compile it into one nice place. We've got our military section in there. Again, the visit schedule is linked, and then the cap and gown information that Bridget had mentioned. So really nice, concise place for everything. Another resource, we kind of always laugh when we talk about this with the students, but dig out that STAR Conference folder from junior years and under the bed or in a file cabinet. You know, where is that at? Time to dig that back out. A lot of the different resources that are linked in the Google Classroom are also in that STAR Conference folder. I mentioned Zello. Students have access through PowerSchool anytime. So if they're on the beginning end of this, like I'm not really sure what I want to do yet, there's assessments in there. There's specific occupations they can check out, and there's school searches where they can set criteria, which is really cool. You know, they can say, I want a school in these states looking for these couple of majors, and I want it to have a crew team and whatever else. So they can really set some parameters and get a nice list of schools that match their criteria. Obviously, we're available to you guys as much as possible virtually right now. We're Zooming with kids and families all afternoon long. When kids are done with classes, we're more than happy to talk and Zoom and email and whatever with you all too. So feel free to bring your questions to us. Assessment-wise, basically alluding to what John talked about with using your test scores and looking at how that will help you on your applications. Something else to consider with the test scores is this sort of kind of creeps up on the students. Whatever kind of four-year school they're going to, they actually have to take another test in the spring called a placement test. And it's typically in math and English. And what this does is help the college know what specific math or math and English class the student should be put into as their first class. Are they struggling a little bit? They need to start out, you know, more of a remediation type. Are they right on track? Are they ahead of the game and can jump ahead to a 200 level? You know, something like that. So we have always, not always, for a long time, we've offered the UW system practice or pre-placement tests. So this is coming up on October 21st and 2nd. Hopefully the kids are here in school to make it a little bit easier, but one test on one day, one test on the other day. And so the students can actually take this practice placement test nice and early. The results come immediately. And so then the students can see, wow, in math, I didn't test where I thought I was going to. And now I have pretty much all my senior year to work on my skills and be where I want to be by the time the real deal placement test comes up in the spring. So it's a really great opportunity for the students. This is completely free for the students to do right here in school. So it's a really awesome opportunity for them. The sign up for that is in the Google Classroom as well. And then sort of mentioned this earlier with the college websites, but they all will have tours and virtual college fairs. They're doing whatever they can to try to get the information to you all to be able to show off their school as best as possible. And 3 more resources. These are all Western specific. Again, a good chunk of our students end up going there. I mentioned MAC. She was the first one that's on that rep and recruiter virtual meet form that we had. So virtual meetings for fall. She typically comes here once a month to meet with students individually, and this would be students interested in Western or technical school in general. And she can help students from the very beginning. I'm not sure what I want to do. Is this the right spot for me? To I'm signed up, I'm ready to go. Let's talk housing or scholarships and everything in between. So we highly encourage the students to sign up for that, no matter where they are in the technical school process. John mentioned the AccuPlacer test for Western. If the student didn't have the 17 on the ACT for almost every program, or the 19 on the ACT if they want that transfer program. If they're going to stay for a year or two, then transfer to the 4-year, they would need the 19. Again, it's on hiatus right now, so we have these dates set. Not sure if we're going to need that November 1, but we're just kind of hanging on to it until we know a little bit more. And then traditionally, Western has offered an open house where people can go walk around the campus and take tours. They can also fill out their application for Western completely free and save the $30. They have all of their financial aid folks. They have people from all the different departments, all of there. So I know that they're working like crazy to try to figure out how to offer that virtually. So when we have the information, we'll share that with you all as well.
All right, thanks, Mrs. Kamoki. So right now we're going to do a little bit of a preview of kind of a mini financial aid session. How do I pay for college? And then Mrs. DeLong, after a break, is going to go into a longer presentation specifically on how does the federal financial aid application work. So first and foremost, what we want students to understand is that they should definitely plan to apply for scholarships. They should definitely plan to apply for federal financial aid. Very rarely, when students do that, are they ever going to be in a situation at the end of this year where they have just a full ride to college and everything is going to be covered. So what that leads to is I really need to think to myself, how is it that I'm going to manage my costs when I get to college? There's going to be ways that I'm going to get help paying for school, but because it still is going to cost a lot of money, how can I manage my costs? So there are a few things that we want to just point out before we even start that process that students and families can take control over. So a couple bullet points there. First and foremost, I can live simply. So what do I eat? What am I going to drive? Where? Purchase? One of the best examples of this is students when they head off to college, a lot of times they might be required to purchase a meal plan. So I'm going to purchase a 19 meal a week meal plan. And so that means I can eat 19 meals during the week, breakfast, lunch, dinner every day. And I've paid for that, but then I decide, you know what, I really like going to Subway and to Applebee's and to, all these other restaurants every single night. And so now what's happening is I'm paying for my meals twice. And so really kind of thinking to yourself what's realistic, and again, is going out to eat to a restaurant probably the most economical way to live simply. So that's one thing. There's a lot of examples of that we can talk about, but you get the picture. Also being cautious of credit cards. I feel like colleges have gotten a little better at holding some credit card companies at bay, but it's not uncommon to see credit card companies, giving away T-shirts for students to apply for a credit card, and then here I have this almost unlimited source of money that I can just go and spend a lot of money with a credit card. Obviously, you'll have to pay that back eventually. So being cautious of that, thinking to myself, how much money do I have? I'm not going to spend more than that because it's something I'm going to have to pay back in loans down the road. Another way that I can help manage my costs is I can work while I'm in school. But of course, if I'm working and maybe I get a work study through my federal financial aid, I need to make sure that I'm not working so much that I do poorly in my classes and that I'm not making adequate progress in my college. So finding the right balance, and every student is slightly different with that. So thinking of that as I'm heading off to college as well. And then the last thing when it comes to how do I manage my costs is really kind of thinking about this idea of the college arms race. So college is a marketplace. Colleges need you to go to their school and pay their tuition and fees in order for them to stay afloat. And so what has happened in the last maybe 10 or 15 years is that colleges, because it's a marketplace and because there's certain things that college students have an appetite for in their college experience. They've really poured a lot of money into things that might have very little to do with your education itself, but more with your experience that you have while you're there. So if you're looking to try and manage your costs, you might think, as you look around the campus, wow, there's a lot of really beautiful things here, shiny and new. That might be part of why that cost is so high. And so, you know, maybe there are some campuses where, all right, the grounds may not be as pretty, but you know what, I really like the professors and I really like the program that they have for this career that I want to follow down the road. That might be something that I really think to myself, you know what, maybe that even though I feel like I'm in a really lush place, when I'm looking at this campus, it may be okay to not necessarily have that weigh as much in my decision-making process. So thinking of all of those things is very important as well. And Mrs. Gamoki will talk to them about scholarships.
All right, and I know we are right up onto our time. We wanted to sneak just a couple quick slides in before we we'll take a shortened break before we start the full financial aid presentation, but we did want to do a reminder about the 4 different types of scholarships because that is so important. So the local OHS scholarships would be the ones that Bridget talked about. Those will be the ones that she provides the application to all the students. The community scholarships would be the ones that are on the high school scholarship database, which is in that Google Classroom. That could be local banks, local companies, different things like that. Also ones that maybe are from your employers or your church. So things that you seek out would be those community-based ones. The college scholarships, which we talked about a bit when we talked about how that essay could be used twice. So make sure you're asking your college. And then the national is the 4th one, obviously the hardest one to get. You have to compete nationally. That would be like FastWeb, FASTWED, FastWeb. So things like that. So those are those 4 big ones. Students can start checking that database right now for scholarships. It's pretty slow right now. It'll get busier as the year goes on and the deadlines range all over the place. So just making sure that your student sort of gets into a routine. Okay, I'm going to check for scholarships every 2 weeks on Saturday afternoon because I don't have anything else to do, you know, whatever it is. So just making sure they're getting into the routine for that. And then want to put these dates in front of you as well. So FAFSA, Chrissy's going to talk about that after the short break. That's your application for the government financial aid to help your student pay for school. And there are 6 different times that there will be virtual events that you can log into a Zoom account. You could listen to a presentation about FAFSA if you're interested. You could also just go straight to your own personal, they call them breakout rooms, where you can start working on your FAFSA and a professional will Zoom in with you to your personal breakout room and help you answer questions about your FAFSA, and you could submit your FAFSA by the time you're done on those nights. They are really nice. It's financial aid folks from the college, for example, from banks, people that maybe know about this, that deal with this a lot. So those are really nice, and you register at College Goal Wisconsin. And then for the students, we also have a FAFSA completion workshop here at school to make sure that we try to hit every student possible and make sure that this isn't a barrier to college for them. All right, so we will do a Q&A right now based on anything that we've talked about so far. So if you hold your mouse down towards the bottom of your screen, you'll see kind of your toolbar. And if you click on the chat, let us know if you have questions. We'll see if we get any. Chrissy is the one that gets to see them as the main host of our Zoom session. And then we're cutting down the 5-minute break to a 2-minute break so we can roll into the financial aid presentation.
All right, so I have a couple of questions that came in while we were talking. So one question about that Google Classroom. How does a student invite us to a Guardian account? When they go into their account, there's a way that they're able to see Invite Guardian, and they can do that. Have them try that out. If it doesn't work, let your counselor know. We believe there's a back way that we can then enter you through your student, but just let us know about that one. We had a couple of students who were already doing that. I saw a couple of parents in there. So there's a way that they can link it from their side when they're looking at their classroom. I had a parent ask, when is the graduation date planned for? I'm not sure if it is officially set by the Board of Education yet, but it is typically the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. So I was actually just pulling that up. So I tentatively, May 29th is what 2021 is looking like the graduation date for this year. If your student missed the meeting that we had last Thursday or Friday, we will be sending that out in an email to them tomorrow that they can watch it. We are also recording this meeting, and so they could, if you wanted them to watch the beginning of this meeting, very similar to what we presented to them last Thursday and Friday, that would be fine as well. Or if they've been sitting alongside you, they've watched it then, and part of that email that we will send, since we did take attendance, is that there will be an exit ticket for them to answer, just so we are sure that they got the information. We can kind of keep track of who we need to follow up with. Okay, if submitting ACT scores, if your student takes the test in October, because there are a couple of dates in October that your students can still sign up for an ACT, will the higher score, like let's say they get a lower score in October than they did when they took it with us here in the winter, what will the college look at? Colleges have said they will take the higher score. Certainly this year, they will especially take the higher score, whether that's March, October, or whenever it may be. They want to help your student, and that's a score that they have earned. And so certainly we can also understand that perhaps in March, when they had been in school for 6 months, they might have done a little bit better because they had that consistent math score. And so whichever one it is, totally fine. Colleges will see both scores if you send both scores to them, or you can submit just one. So that's a good follow-up question. Yes, you can control what they see if you hadn't already sent the score to them, but know that colleges are not going to look and say, you got a 22 the first time and a 26 the second time. We're going to need to do some investigating here. They really will just take the better score. So tonight we're going to be talking about several different things. What is financial aid and who can apply? There are several different types. We've talked about scholarships pretty extensively, but we're going to talk about some of those need-based areas. So how is financial need determined? There is a formula that they use, the different types of financial aid, and then how to apply. So how to apply is by using the FAFSA form. You'll hear me say that a couple of times today. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. We'll go over some common questions, some things that families typically ask as they're filling it out, or some different things that sometimes trip people up, and then the resources that are available to you as you're filling it out. So what is financial aid? Financial aid are the funds that are available to help students pay for college. The primary goal is by looking at evaluating that family's ability to pay for educational costs, distributing then the limited resources that are available in as equitable of a manner as possible, and then looking at a balance between that gift aid and self-help aid. So in order to apply for financial aid, there are a few things that you do need to be sure of, and you see them listed on the screen here. The main things for our students is that they need to be enrolled in school at least half-time. So taking 6 credits, or typically that's 2 classes at a time. So that is one area that often happens, as well as maintaining satisfactory academic progress as determined by college. So passing your courses, attending classes, and being in good standing with your college are all necessary to continue receiving financial aid. So the cost of attendance is what you will hear a lot of colleges talk about. And so when I talk about the financial aid process, keep in mind, colleges refers to any school building, whether that's a technical, a four-year college, a private school, a public school. They all use the same determinations for cost of attendance and financial need. So cost of attendance is the tuition and fees, the actual classes themselves. Then there's room and board. So if you live on campus, the room is your housing, the board is your meal plan. So they do factor that into the cost of attendance, and students will be able to select whether they plan to live on campus or not, which will then determine what their cost of attendance is at that campus. Books, some campuses allow you to rent their textbooks. Other campuses, there is a private way that students pay for their textbooks, and so there is a substantial cost sometimes each semester to pay for textbooks. So that is a good question when looking at campuses in considering the financial cost. And then they also include related expenses, transportation, personal expenses, knowing that, sometimes students will need to drive to campus and need gas and ability to pay for a car. There is some of that that's determined into cost of attendance so that students can afford. Cost of attendance is different at each college. So locally here in La Crosse, we have Western Technical College, UW La Crosse, and Viterbo University. All have different costs of attendance and all have different financial aid opportunities for students. If a college receives federal assistance, so if they are able to give students grants and loans, they have to publish their cost of attendance on their website. The best place for you to find that is under their financial aid area. A lot of times there is a cost of attendance calculator where you're able to answer some of your personal information, and then it would be able to calculate sometimes your financial need. So you would see that. Expected family contribution, or EFC, is the amount that a family can reasonably be expected to contribute to a student's financial cost of attendance. Now, this is not a cost that you have to pay, and in some families, they're often sometimes surprised by this expected family contribution. It might seem higher or lower than you had expected to pay. So know that this is just kind of their way to be able to compare students' financial needs and be able to prioritize some of that need-based financial aid. And it doesn't always feel like a fair process, but it's the best that they've been able to come up with over the last however many years they've had this formula. Your expected family contribution stays the same regardless of the college that you're looking at. So I mentioned locally here, the 3 campuses, your expected family contribution will stay the same, and you'll be able to see in this formula here, they take the cost of attendance at the school, subtract the expected family contribution, and that is your financial need. So your financial need at Viterbo would be higher than your financial need at UW La Crosse. However, Viterbo does have a large amount of scholarships in their endowments that they often use in order to keep their financial need as small as possible for families to make it affordable. So don't necessarily let the cost of attendance drive you away from looking at a campus, but it is just kind of a way for you to get a ballpark idea and then be able to compare your financial need and what they're able to offer. So completing the FAFSA is often the first step to be able to receive these types of funds. And like I mentioned, the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. FAFSA.gov is the website that you want to be using. Unfortunately, there is a FAFSA.com that is out there, and it charges you money to apply. Please, if you, just like Bridget mentioned with scholarships, if you are asked to pay for financial aid, you are likely in the wrong spot, and we want to make sure that you're in the correct spot. So FAFSA.gov is the best place to be for that, and all of your information is private as well. So this unlocks federal funds. So these would be the grants, work study, and student and parent loans, and I'll talk about each of these in a moment. And then also state funds. And so state funds are for Wisconsin residents who graduate from a Wisconsin high school and go to a Wisconsin college. And so keep that in mind, that state funds stay in the state, grants or scholarships. So in the federal grant area, there's a federal Pell Grant. The amount that is able to be given out each year went up slightly this year. So it's currently $6,345 per year for a student. And the SEOG grant ranges from $100 to $4,000. Now, the Pell Grant is available to any student who qualifies. The SEOG grant has a set amount, and so that one often runs out. And so when it is gone, then that's the reason to apply a little earlier, right? We like students to apply for financial aid as soon as possible, but as long as you apply by a school's priority date, which I'll talk about in a moment, you will be considered for the full amount of grants. So meeting that priority deadline is important. There is the Federal Work Study Program. So this is where you can work on campus and you receive money up front, or you receive money like a paycheck, as you are working in order to help pay for your costs. So this would be an example of a student who maybe works the front desk of their residence hall, or they work in the food services or other type of job on campus. It's a flexible position. You often work when the campus is open, and it's flexible to your classes. They're not going to have you work during class time, or like if you go on a winter break, you're often able to coordinate that with your work. And like I mentioned, you get paid every 2 weeks. And so this might not be funds that are available up front to pay for tuition and books, unless you are saving it for a future semester. But a lot of times students use this for those daily costs of attending school. Federal student loans. So there are direct Stafford loans to help any student who fills out the FAFSA to be able to take in order to go to college. There are some limits, and so we're going to be talking about, these are the limits for an incoming freshman. It does go up as you become a junior and a senior in college, but for the sake of this conversation, this is what it is for an incoming freshman. There are two different types of loans, a subsidized student loan and an unsubsidized student loan. The subsidized student loan, the interest on the loan while you are in school is paid for. And so students will only be responsible for the amount that they took out after graduation. For unsubsidized loans, there is interest that accrues on the loan. The student is responsible for that interest. They can choose to pay it while they're going to school, or it can be added to their total loan payment and worked into their payments after graduation. Now I say after graduation, but there is also the chance that if a student no longer attends school or drops below half time, there is a often 6-month waiting period, and then students start to be responsible for the balance of their loans. So in order for a student to take out a federal student loan, they will have to do entrance counseling through their college. I definitely encourage you, as parents, if you are helping your students fill out these financial aid documents, that is okay, but please have your student nearby, especially for this entrance counseling, because they are the ones who are borrowing the money and will be responsible for paying for it. And we want to make sure they fully understand the cost of their attendance and also what they will be required to pay. Now, subsidized loans are based on financial need. So based on what you are able to put into the FAFSA, your campus will let you know how much you qualify for a subsidized loan. Students can qualify for up to $3,500 with a subsidized loan and up to $2,000 in an unsubsidized loan. If a student doesn't qualify for a subsidized loan, they can get the full $5,500 in an unsubsidized loan. So oftentimes students might fall somewhere in the middle, but know that $5,500 can be borrowed per year between an unsubsidized and subsidized loan, just depending on that student's and family's financial need. There is also a parent loan called the Parent Plus loan. This was created so that if a student is attending a college, if their cost or their financial need is above what they're able to get in grants and loans, and then there's a gap there of how much they're able to pay. If the family or the student doesn't have the ability to pay for that amount of money outside or out of pocket, there is a parent loan that you can do to borrow between the cost of attendance minus all of the other aid that your student has received. So grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. Now the interest rate is rather high. It has come down significantly this year. Interest rates are set July 1st of every year. So this is this school year's financial or interest rates. They will be set again in July. We don't usually see a whole lot of change between them, but it will change slightly from year to year. So 5.3% is the interest rate. You can pay as you go or as your student drops below halftime. Most families choose to pay as they go. I always give the caveat, if you are looking at this Parent Plus loan, I do also suggest that you just check with some other private options as well with your bank or your credit union, because they may have some other options that would have a lower interest rate. And so that is your personal choice. Know that there are other options available as well for you to look at. All right, so state grants and scholarships. I mentioned that this is for Wisconsin students who go to Wisconsin College. And what I mean by that is that they need to be attending, as you see at the bottom of the slide, a public school like a UW would be a public Wisconsin college. Private schools, so Viterbo, Marquette, Edgewood College and Madison are all private schools in Wisconsin. The technical college system, so Western Technical College, Mid-State, Fox Valley Tech, or tribal schools, and we have a couple of those in Wisconsin. What does not qualify would be a either out-of-state school that is here in Wisconsin, like has a branch here, or a for-profit school. So Herzing University is an example, a student who attends University of Phoenix Online. Those would be examples of for-profit or out-of-state schools that would not qualify for a Wisconsin state grant. So there is the Wisconsin State Grant that is up to $3,150 per year. There is money that is meant for the public school system as well as the private school system. So you can certainly get those in either area. And your college would let you know what you are able to receive. There's the TIP grant. It's called the Talent Incentive Program Grant. And this is up to $1,800 per year. In order for a family to qualify for the TIP grant, they need to have a zero EFC or a zero expected family contribution. So typically, this would be a family that qualifies for free or reduced lunch here in Onalaska, would be a family that may have a zero EFC. It is a slightly complicated formula, so there's no black and white way that I can say whether you would qualify or not. But based on filling out the FAFSA, you would know your EFC right away. And then if you have a zero EFC, we highly recommend that you apply for this TIP grant because there's money set aside for students here in La Crosse County, and we want to be sure that that money is given to students. There are two scholarships, the Academic Excellence Scholarship and the Technical Excellence Scholarship. There is board policy about which students receive these scholarships. So Academic Excellence Scholarship is for a student who typically are given to two students who have the highest GPA and class rank. And then there are some tiebreaker criteria. And so if you're curious about that, we can certainly share that information. And then the Technical Excellence Scholarship is for a student who is going to a Wisconsin technical school and typically has shown to be a CTE or a career and technical education concentrator. So a student who has taken some classes here at Onalaska and is looking to go into that program at the technical school. So for example, a student who has taken Accounting 1 and Accounting 2 and plans to go to Western and look at a business or accounting program. That would be a student who would qualify for technical excellence, and they do need to fill out an additional application for that that we provide to them as part of Bridget's scholarship in January. So that information is shared with students. So scholarships in general, money gifted to students that can be based on their academic merit. We talked a little bit about that as far as colleges giving scholarships to students. A lot of times we will see, especially at a private school, you might see something like the Presidential Scholarship. For students who have at least a 3.5 GPA, they receive the X amount of money per year. And then they have the Chancellor's Scholarship, and that's a different amount. So especially private schools have those endowments to be able to award for academic merit. But colleges in the state system do as well. Special skills and talents. So certainly students who are maybe interested in a non-traditional career, there may be scholarships for that. Membership or service to an organization. So not only students' membership in different community organizations, but parents as well. So oftentimes students will find scholarships through organizations their parents are involved in or through their parents' employer. So those are good places to look. And then money based on financial need. You'll also see that there are many places to look for scholarships. So we've talked about these, and Beth highlighted the 4 main areas. So just kind of some places to look at, as well as some websites that, like we mentioned, are safe and secure places to look. There are scholarships also for students doing things like creating an art project. So I had a student who competed in the Doodle for Google scholarship, where she created a Google image that was a representation of a little girl running towards a service member. And at the very end, she hugs the service member who was her dad. And it went from black and white to color. And she won this big Doodle for Google scholarship contest and a ton of money for her art education. So there's also some cool things that for her, maybe writing an essay was not something she felt as good at doing, but she was an amazing artist and was able to earn some money through scholarships through that program. I mentioned that there are private bank loans. So this is money that could be borrowed by a student. Oftentimes students would need an adult as a co-signer, but also parents could borrow for private bank loans. It mentions to explore all other options first, mainly just because oftentimes you have to put assets against your loans in order to do that. And so the federal government does not expect that you have to take a second mortgage on your house to put your student through college, but do look at all of the different options that are available and compare interest rates and other things like that to make sure that you're making the best use there. All right, before I go into this, I'm just gonna see, okay, no questions yet. All right, so completing the FAFSA. The first step to completing the FAFSA is getting an FSA ID. And so this is how you will sign your FAFSA. There used to be a PIN number. So parents, if you yourself filled out the FAFSA, you might have had a PIN number, or you might have had a PIN number when you filled out the FAFSA for another student. You will need to create an FSA ID. Also, if you maybe filled out the FAFSA form 2-3 years ago, you would have signed it with an FSA ID. This has been around for about 5 years now. And so you will use the same FSA ID for all of your students. So students have their own FSA ID and a parent has an FSA ID. Think of it like your signature. You only need one of them. And only one parent needs an FSA ID in order to sign the FAFSA form. So this is something that you can do now. You could go on to FAFSA's website and create an FSA ID so that you have that set to go for when you fill out the FAFSA form. Couple of things that you need in order to fill out the FAFSA. A couple of important numbers and dates. So Social Security number, both for students and parents. That's the best way for them to be able to tie your FAFSA to your college application and make sure that it goes to the correct person. And also because they will verify your information with the IRS and with other different bureaus based on the numbers you're reporting. And that's a typical part of the process. Some important dates. This is often a little harder. birth dates, sometimes marriage dates. I've sat with several families over the years, and as they fill out their FAFSA form, both parents looking at each other like, when's our anniversary? So just something that you may want to collect ahead of time, or if the student is filling out the FAFSA form, good to have this all filled out, or just kind of gather some of this information ahead of time. You'll need your 2019 tax information. I know this seems backwards because we just filed 2020 tax information, but about 5 years ago, again, the FAFSA made some changes to have it go towards what they call the prior year, or really just using tax information from 2 years ago. And the reason they did this is because students used to have to wait until February or March to fill out their FAFSA form. And now you're going to be able to fill it out starting October 1st. And so they needed to use the previous year's tax information to be sure that everybody had filed. And then also that you can use some different resources that they have. And I'll explain that in a moment. They will also ask for recent bank balances, so a balance of your savings and checking, both for students separately and parents, and then amounts of other income or net value of assets. And I'll explain what's an asset and what's not. So I mentioned October 1st of the senior year. This is when the FAFSA will become available. And then you just want to file it anytime between October 1st and that college's priority deadline. December is oftentimes when I start to see those priority deadlines, so please don't feel like you have to rush out and fill this out on October 1st. You do have some time, but just check with your colleges to see when that deadline is, especially if you're thinking you might qualify for some of those need-based aid amounts that only have a set amount of reserves. So this is what the FAFSA website looks like. Like I mentioned, FAFSA.gov. And students will create an account. Then they will fill out the 2021-2022 FAFSA. You will not see this as an option until October 1st. So that's why we're saying start with that FSA ID and then hold off. But keep in mind, even though the 2021 FAFSA is available, that is because current students can continue to fill out the FAFSA form. So you want to be sure that you're using from after you graduate and into the following school year, your freshman year of college. The first part of the FAFSA talks about student demographics. And so it's gonna ask a lot of questions about you and your. And sometimes families are filling this out together, and they'll fill this out as the parent's information. So keep in mind, you and your is the student, your parents are the parents of the senior. I have had some families fill out you and your, and then get to your parents and think, why do they need grandma's financial information? So just kind of, they are making the assumption students are filling out the FAFSA form, which we would appreciate that students are the ones sitting at the computer filling it out and parents are assisting. It's a great lesson in that adulthood, and we want students to be able to feel comfortable knowing what they're doing. So you'll provide some basic information about yourself. And if ever you are, as you're filling it out, you're not sure, there's a help and hints section on the side. And also when you click on a box, say to enter in some tax information, it will automatically populate in the help and hints off to the side, something like, this is from box 12 of your Form 1040. So it does help you out that way. We do suggest that students say yes to the work study because you can always not take a work study, but it's hard to, you don't want to have to go back into the FAFSA form and say yes, that you want to be considered for a work study later. So say yes now, and then look for an employment later. Selective service. So male students between 18 and 26 must register with the selective service in order to qualify for financial aid. It's one of the checks that they do through the FAFSA. If you haven't already registered for selective service, it will give you the option to say, I haven't registered, please register me. So know that that is also an option available here. It will ask questions about your high school. So this is where you're going to want to link to Onalaska High School and searching for us by city and state, because there is an Onalaska, Washington, believe it or not, that we do get lots of requests for sometimes. And then you're able to list up to 10 colleges that the student might attend. If a student is wanting to apply to more than 10 colleges, after the FAFSA is submitted, we can add additional schools. But for the purpose of brevity, it is 10 colleges the first time you fill it out. Students will need to choose a housing plan. So whether they plan to live on campus in the residence halls, off campus in an apartment, or with a parent, because that certainly changes a little bit about their financial need. Then a student will answer dependency questions. Typically, students are going to be dependents as considered by the FAFSA, even if they are 18 and considered independents in your house and they are an adult. So there are very few situations where a student does not have to put a family or a parent on the FAFSA, and they're listed here. So typically students were born after 1998 if they are seniors in high school, and some other options as well. So sometimes foster care or legal guardianship are the main areas that we might see where a student does not have to put a parent on the FAFSA. And we are happy to walk you through that if you have a question about whether or not you need to put a parent on the FAFSA. Having a parent who is not willing to provide financial information is not eligible for being able to not list parent financial information. And colleges also can kind of help walk through there. But since you're here on this call, you are probably willing to fill out information. And like I mentioned, know that you're not going to be ever required to pay anything. This is just to help your student qualify, and your student is the borrower. All right, parent information. Who provides parent information on the FAFSA? So both biological or adoptive parents, if they live together, regardless of marital status. And so they will ask, what about your household? And so sometimes there's a student who live with both parents, but they're not legally married. They do still include both of those parents on the FAFSA. However, the question that we get the most is what happens if a parent is divorced, separated, or they don't live together? In this situation, what the FAFSA will say is, what parent have you lived with more in the last 12 months? So one thing I will say, I've heard different answers about this based on the colleges. I have heard some colleges say, there are 365 days in a year. There is one parent you've lived with more than the other. Now, I also know how unreasonable that would be for you to pull out a calendar and count out who that student has lived with more. And so then they will move on to the next question and say, or if a student shares time between both parents' house, which parent provides more financial support? And in any situation that I have worked with a student on filling out financial aid, there has been a parent we've been able to identify as who provides more financial support. So typically thinking about, this is not necessarily who claims the student on income taxes, because often that is determined in a situation of divorce. That is often a part of the divorce agreement where parents may switch years for who claims the student for taxes. It is who provides more financial support. So think about who carries the health insurance. If the student has a car or car insurance, who pays for that? Who pays for, kind of those daily costs? I see a couple questions that popped in, and this is an area I get a lot of questions about, so I just want to look at it real quick. So yes, for separated families, they will ask what is the date of separation, and so same thing like this, you would answer it as if it were a legal divorce. They'll ask for a date of separation, just like a date of legal divorce. And then that parent the student lives with the most or who provides more financial support is on here. One thing I will mention is sometimes families will say, the student lives with me more often. However, the other parent is not as financially sound as I am, so I would like my student to use that parent. Unfortunately, that's not an option according to the FAFSA and the federal government. You do need to put the parent that student lives with or who provides more financial support. And the reason that this is important is because 1 out of 3 students are selected for verification, and they will, that is something that they will look for, that they will ask for support documents about. So it's random, 1 out of 3, but they will look at it and say, they will often ask in that situation to provide information about who provides more financial support. So they're looking at those different areas. Let's see. I think I answered the question about if the student are not 18 by the October filing date. Oh, actually, never mind. That is a different question. For the selective service, yes, if you don't turn 18 before, you can say I'm not yet 18, but enroll me when I am. And so then it kind of takes care of it for you. So yes, you can definitely do that. Should you complete the FAFSA for next year, even if your student might not go to school right away? I would suggest, especially as you mentioned in the question, it might be a good way to find out potential aid. And then every year that you fill out the FAFSA is a little easier after you filled it out one time. So it's not like you'd be wasting a whole lot of time. And there's a slick tool I'll show you in a minute that makes it even faster. So the next thing it will ask for, parent demographics. So asking about that parent, when you identify which parent you live with more, then it will ask about the marital status of that parent. So if a student lives with mom and mom is remarried, mom and mom's spouse is who would be listed on the FAFSA as the household parents for that student. They would not put any other parents listed on the FAFSA. It's based on household size only. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Social Security numbers. If a parent doesn't have a Social Security number, you can use all zeros. But you do need to, there is an extra step that you need to do at the very end. You would have to print out your form to sign the confirmation page. You're not able to use an FSA ID. And then certainly you might want to check with the college as well. This would be in a situation where a student is a legal resident, but a parent is not. So you will enter your 2019 federal tax information. You can do it manually, but I highly suggest the IRS data retrieval. It saves a ton of time for you as a student and parent. It avoids errors because it's pulling your information directly from your tax transcript from 2019. And if you get selected for verification, you do not have to go through the pain of getting your tax transcript from the IRS, which is a large process. You're able to just automatically be verified for those numbers. So when you fill out the FAFSA, it will ask you, would you like to link to the IRS data retrieval? This is a process that they have added a lot of added layers of security to in the last couple of years in order to make sure that everything is private. As part of that, if you use the IRS data retrieval, which again I suggest, when it pulls that information into your FAFSA, it will not list the information it pulled in. It will just say, information provided by IRS data retrieval. That's for your privacy, so that if somebody were able to somehow access your FAFSA, they do not access that information as if they were maybe looking at that screen, let's say, while you were on it. So it's for your security and privacy and a really fast and efficient way to fill out your FAFSA. We'll ask for bank balance and asset information. Some of the assets that you will need to report are listed here. The main things that you do not report, you do not need to report the value of your home, and you do not need to report the value of a business if you have less than 100 employees. So if you have a small business, typically you would have less than 100 employees. You do not need to list the value of that business, or like I mentioned, the value of your home. And that is listed on this slide, mainly because also we do not want you to have to sell your home or your business to pay for your students' education and other types of areas that are your sources of income. Same thing if it's a farm that you live on and operate. You do not need to include life insurance amounts, retirement accounts for parents, and then I mentioned that small business. If you have more than 50% of control and less than 100 employees, you do not include the value of that. If you have land outside of your home, like you have a cabin or hunting land that's separate from your home, then you will likely need to provide the value of that asset. Section 5 repeats all of that same tax information, but this time for the student. Oftentimes that's much easier because students do not have nearly as complicated of federal tax information as parents do. And so they will fill out all of that information. If a student has an asset, sometimes students have an EdVest savings plan or a 529 account. It just depends on whose name it's listed in. And often it is listed in that student's name. If, say, grandma or grandpa started it when they were born, the student would list it as their asset on the FAFSA. Afterwards, you check to make sure that all of the information that you entered is correct. You will enter your FSA ID both for the student and the parent, and then you are able to submit it. Like I mentioned, if you don't have a social security number, then you need to print a signature page, and then you print that and send it in. You have the option to do this instead of doing the FSA ID, but it will really hold up your FAFSA being processed. So please use the FSA ID in order to get all of that information into them and mail it immediately. This is what the confirmation page looks like when you have completed the FAFSA. So it's going to let you know that it was successfully transmitted. And then what you can see, there's a little green arrow and it says, does your brother or sister need to complete a FAFSA? So if you have a student currently in college, or I know that there are some twins in this graduating class, this is for you. So what you would do as a parent, basically what you're saying is transfer your parents' information into a new FAFSA. Because they're going to see that social security number for student A and student B having the same parent social security number. And if that information doesn't match up, you'll be selected for verification. By clicking this link, it will automatically create a new account, transfer all the parents' financial information into it, and then you will be able to just change the student information. So that's definitely something that is handy for you. It only shows up when you are on this confirmation page. So take note that once you click off of this confirmation page, unfortunately, you are not able to find this feature again. You can always transfer the information, save the FAFSA for the second student and come back to it later, but you will want to transfer it from this page in order for all that information to go through. Toward the bottom of that screen, it will list the schools that you apply to, some different information about that student school as far as like their graduation rate and other important info. But below that will be the information you're likely looking for the most, which is that expected family contribution. And so then that number will show you what they calculated based on parent financial information and student financial information. Off on the right-hand column, then it will give some estimates as far as Pell Grant and loan information, but typically it's not going to be a very detailed list. You will get much more information from your college campus. At this point, your information has been sent. So what happens next is a couple of days after submitting the FAFSA, you will receive information from them. So you will receive your student aid report. And what you do there is you log back in to FAFSA.gov using students FSA ID, and you look at your student aid report to make sure everything looks correct. It is basically just a itemization of everything that you have put in. Make sure that you didn't add extra zeros or extra places in that one. And if you need to make corrections, you're able to do that through the FAFSA website at that point. Colleges will then receive your information. They may select you for verification randomly, and then they will give you information about how to complete that process. So the main thing is checking your emails for information from both your colleges or from FAFSA to make sure that everything went through. Colleges will then review your FAFSA information. They will send you a financial aid offer. And typically we see those coming to students in February it just depends. The main thing to know is that January 1st is often when colleges find out exactly how much money they'll have in their budgets. So if you fill out the FAFSA in October, they might be able to give you an estimated award letter, but they're not able to give you an actual award letter typically until a little bit later in the winter when they know their actual budgets. Often colleges have been doing a lot over the last couple of years to streamline this process and get information to students and families as soon as possible, but know that sometimes this waiting period is a little long depending on when you filled it out. And colleges will try to do that estimate in order to give you an idea. Once you receive your financial aid offer, you will need to go through and accept your financial aid. Typically, this is done through the college portal. So UWL, for example, has a WINGS portal where students have a student ID and password. So also keeping those college emails somewhere handy so that you can find all that information is great. And then you go into that WINGS portal and it will list, you received the Pell Grant, and yes, accept the free money for sure, accept all of the grants that you receive. But then it will say about work study, and you can choose to accept or decline, and then same thing for student loans. You can also, let's say you qualify for the full amount of student loans, but you don't need all of that money for your freshman year. Maybe you received some grants or some scholarships. You can also modify the amount before you accept it. And so know that you do not have to accept the full amount that you receive. And certainly if you don't need it, I do not recommend that because you're paying it back with the interest later. So a couple of resources for you. There is a 1-800 number that is staffed Monday through Friday, and you're able to get your questions answered. This 1-800-4FED-AID. I've used it before. It's super helpful to be able to kind of walk you through if you have a question. Know that there are certainly lots of those College Goal Wisconsin dates that are available, and that's a great time to fill out the FAFSA and be able to have that time to work with a financial aid professional and walk you through it. FAFSA.gov, tons of information there. StudentAid.gov is kind of the backside where if you wanted more information about different student loans, there's a lot of information that can be found on that website. But once you've submitted the FAFSA, the best place to go for your financial aid questions is to the actual financial aid office at either the colleges you're considering, or if you've made a decision, the college you're attending. Sometimes students might need to make a change to their financial information after they've submitted the FAFSA. So sometimes there's a family change. Maybe a parent has lost employment, or employment has been reduced, or there might have been a marital status change. Then you can contact the college and they're able to make adjustments in what's called a professional development. And so they really will walk you through that process and be able to answer any questions you have. So definitely contact your financial aid office with that.